Everybody who isn't here yet, as always, welcome to another of my late night reading streams. We are in the middle of reading The Dreams in the Witch House by Howard Phillips Lovecraft, in part because my connection kept dropping last night. Not sure what was causing the problem, but I gave up after about 45 minutes of reading the second time. Well, hopefully that won't happen again. I may or may not read the whole story. I believe there's probably about an hour 10 of the reading left of The Dreams in the Witch House. I'm going to pick up okay, I'm backing up a page. I don't know when exactly the connection dropped out, but there's a reasonable place between paragraphs to stop a page earlier than where I did stop. Let me kick over the little table too. As always, I've turned off the monetization for the live. If you enjoy these streams, please consider throwing me a tip at the paypal.me/Roganautica link or throwing a tip through the donation button, which goes 70% to YouTube, pays the house as well as me. Thank you. I should remember to do that more often while I'm actually reading. Around the 1st of April, Gilman worried considerably because his slow fever did not abate. He was also troubled by what some of his fellow lodgers said about his sleepwalking. It seemed that he was often absent from his bed, and that the creaking of his floor at certain hours of the night was remarked by the man in the room below. This fellow also spoke of hearing the tread of shod feet in the night, but Gilman was sure he must have been mistaken in this, since shoes as well as other apparel were always precisely in place in the morning. One could develop all sorts of oral delusions in this morbid old house, for did not Gilman himself, even in daylight, now feel certain that noises, other than rat scratchings, came from the black voids beyond the slanting wall and above the slanting ceiling? His pathologically sensitive ears began to listen for faint footfalls in the immemorially sealed loft overhead, and sometimes the illusion of such things was agonizingly realistic. However, he knew that he had actually become a somnambulist, for twice at night his room had been found vacant, though with all his clothing in place. Of this he had been assured by Frank Elwood, the one fellow student whose poverty forced him to room in this squalid and unpopular house. Elwood had been studying in the small hours and had come up for help on a differential equation, only to find Gilman absent. It had been rather presumptuous of him to open the unlocked door after knocking had failed to rouse a response, but he had needed the help very badly and thought that his host would not mind a gentle prodding awake. Yeah, I used to live in a dorm. We would wake the shit out of people for like weed or homework. I mean, I'm just saying that's normal. What's not normal is that he knew where all his clothing was. How do you know your friend's wardrobe so well, guy? Like, on another occasion, though, had Gilman been there, and when told of the matter, he wondered where he could have been wandering barefoot and with only his nightclothes on. He resolved to investigate the matter if reports of his sleepwalking continued, and thought of sprinkling flour on the floor of the corridor to see where his footsteps might lead. The door was the only conceivable egress, for there was no possible foothold outside the narrow window. As April advanced, Gilman's fever-sharpened ears were disturbed by the whining prayers of a superstitious loom-fixer named Joe Mazurowicz, who had a room on the ground floor. I remember because I was making fun of his weird ethnic names. Mazurowicz had told long, rambling stories about the ghost of old Keziah and the furry, sharp-fanged, nuzzling thing, and had said he was so badly haunted at times that only his silver crucifix, given him for the purpose by Father Iwanicki of St. Stanislaus Church, could bring him relief. Now he was praying because the witches' Sabbath was drawing near. May Eve was Walpurgis night, when hell's blackest evil roamed the earth and all the slaves of Satan gathered for nameless rites and deeds. It was always a very bad time in Arkham, even though the fine folks up in Miskatonic Avenue and High and Saltonstall streets pretended to know nothing about it. There would be bad doings, and a child or two would probably be missing. Joe knew about such things, for his grandmother in the old country had heard tales from her grandmother. It was wise to pray and count one's beads at this season. For 3 months, Keziah and Brown Jenkin had not been near Joe's room, nor Paul Choinsky's room, nor anywhere else, and it meant no good when they held off like that. They must be up to something. I like that the vampiric monster attacks through the walls enough that it's seasonal. Like, yeah, they're up to something when he hasn't been, nuzzling up to people and sucking their blood in their sleep, recently. Usually him and the witch, they're cooking something up. Like, fuck, dude. Just do something about it. Gilman dropped in at a doctor's office on the 16th of the month and was surprised to find his temperature was not as high as he had feared. Yeah, that's right, because that got a big laugh out of me last night. Right. Yeah, you're not hallucinating. It's not fever. The physician questioned him sharply and advised him to see a nerve specialist. On reflection, he was glad he had not consulted the still more inquisitive college doctor. Old Waldron, who had curtailed his activities before, would have made him take a rest, an impossible thing now that he was so close to great results in his equations. He was certainly near the boundary between the known universe and the fourth dimension, and who could say how much farther he might go? Yeah. Fifth, sixth, there's potential. Once you've got the gravity bong put together, the sky's the limit. But even as these thoughts, I'm thinking of dorm life. There wasn't a real connection there, I realize. It's because when I lived in a dorm, I learned to build a gravity bong on the fly with whatever was laying around. Thank you. Thank you very much. Emerson in Boston. Yep, learned a lot there. But even as these thoughts came to him, he wondered at the source of his strange confidence. Did all of this perilous sense of imminence come from the formulae on the sheets he covered day by day? The soft, stealthy, imaginary footsteps in the sealed loft above were unnerving. And now, too, there was a growing feeling that somebody was constantly persuading him to do something terrible which he could not do. How about the somnambulism? Where did he go sometimes in the night? And what was the faint suggestion of sound which once in a while seemed to trickle through the maddening confusion of identifiable sounds, even in broad daylight and full wakefulness? Its rhythm did not correspond to anything on earth, unless perhaps to the cadence of one or two unmentionable Sabbath chants, and sometimes he feared it corresponded to certain attributes of the vague shrieking or roaring in those wholly alien abysses of dream. I do always say during these readings at some point, one of the things I'd like to ask the Lovecraft expert S.T. Joshi about is Lovecraft and drugs. This sure seems like a description of amphetamine psychosis. This is written in the 1930s. So that's entirely possible that is indeed what's going on here. Joshi would probably know. The dreams were meanwhile getting to be atrocious. In the lighter preliminary phase, the evil old woman was now of fiendish distinctness, and Gilman knew she was the one who had frightened him in the slums. Her bent-back long nose and shriveled chin were unmistakable, and her shapeless brown garments were like those he remembered. It's a little weird, too, that Lovecraft is nailing the archetypal old witch from sleep paralysis hallucinations. I didn't know that she existed before, the current internet era. I didn't know that was a thing. I used to have sleep paralysis bad when I was a kid. I just had shadow guys flitting across the wall, though. There's no witch or hat guy. There's never a hat guy. Her bent-back long nose and shriveled chin were unmistakable, and her shapeless brown garments were like those he remembered. The expression on her face was one of hideous malevolence and exultation, and when he awaked he could recall a croaking voice that persuaded and threatened. He must meet the Black Man and go with them all to the throne of Azathoth at the center of ultimate chaos. That was what she said. He must sign in his own blood the Book of Azathoth and take a new secret name now that his independent delvings had gone so far. What kept him from going with her and Brown Jenkin and the other to the throne of chaos where the thin flutes piped mindlessly was the fact that he had seen the name Azathoth in the Necronomicon and knew it stood for a primal evil too horrible for description. It's like he was going along until he heard that the deal he was going to sign in blood for his soul was with Satan. Oh, hold on. You're Satan? Okay. I've heard about you. This is a bum deal. You're not going to give me shit for my soul. Be gone with thee. Like I said in the last stream, I'm not sure if Lovecraft intentionally directly and I think he intends the irony, like the layer of humor here, but I don't know that he intends you to stop and laugh out loud like I do. The old woman always appeared out of thin air near the corner where the downward slant met the inward slant. She seemed to crystallize at a point closer to the ceiling than to the floor, and every night she was a little nearer and more distinct before the dream shifted. Brown Jenkin, too, was always a little nearer at the last, and its yellowish-white fangs glistened shockingly in that unearthly violet phosphorescence. Its shrill, loathsome tittering stuck more and more in Gilman's head, and he could remember in the morning how it had pronounced the words Azathoth and Nyarlathotep. In the deeper dreams, everything was likewise more distinct, and Gilman felt that the twilight abysses around him were those of the fourth dimension. Those organic entities whose motions seemed least fragrantly irrelevant and unmotivated were probably projections of life forms from our own planet, including human beings. What the others were in their own dimensional sphere or spheres he dared not try to think. Two of the less irrelevantly moving things, a rather large congeries of iridescent, prolately spheroidal bubbles, and a very much smaller polyhedron of unknown colors and rapidly shifting surface angles, seemed to take notice of him and follow him about or float ahead as he changed position among the Titan prisms, labyrinths, cube and plane clusters, and quasi-buildings, and all the while the vague shrieking and roaring waxed louder and louder, as if approaching some monstrous climax of utterly unendurable intensity. During the night of April 19th to 20th, the new development occurred. That's my birthday, but all right. Gilman was half involuntarily moving about in the twilight abysses with the bubble mass and the small polyhedron floating ahead when he's got buddies. When he noticed the peculiarly regular... Well, hello, Zoe. What's up, little buddy? Hi. Love you too, friend. Oh, Pywack gets back there too. I didn't realize. I have my honor guard. You guys are going to love it in Mississippi. It never gets cold there. If you got outside and got stuck outside, you'd be safe. Are you going to sit in my lap? Yeah. Yes. All right, I'm going to read. You got to lay down. Yes, I love you too, Miss Zoe. You're a good kitty. Are you going to lay down? You got this. You can handle it. Yes? All right. Where was I? During the night of April 19th to 20th, the new development occurred. Yes, Zoe. Are you going to settle? You going to let me read? You want me to pet you? All right. You want to go that way? All right. There we go, buddy. Much better. That's claws in my knee, but all right. I'll take it. Right. Gilman was half involuntarily moving. You're going to fall, dude. Be careful. Gilman was half involuntarily moving about in the twilight abysses with the bubble mass and the small polyhedron floating ahead. Oh my god! After all that, you're just gonna do that? No, you're just you're reapproaching. Okay, I love you too, buddy. You can't have my hands right now, though, buddy. I'm reading. You can lay down in my lap. I love you too, Zoe. You're very good. You're just not gonna lay down till I pet you some? Okay. Yes. Yes, you're very good, Zoe. All right. Are you gonna lay down? Are you just gonna? That's very weird. Yes. There's people here to hear me read, buddy. You know what I'm doing. You do this every night. I love you too, buddy. I think Zoe and Pi are a little extra worried about me because of me yelling at the roommates earlier. Also, Zoe got outside in the yard for a minute, and that's what set off the fight with the roommates. So, hold on a minute. Oh my god, why are you showing me that? All right, Zoe's purring now, so maybe she'll let me read. Will you let me read? I know you like having your feet on the book. During the night of April 19th to 20th, my birthday, the new development occurred. Gilman was half involved. Oh, right, his friends, right. When he noticed the peculiarly regular angles formed by the edges of some gigantic neighboring prism clusters. In another second, he was out of the abyss and standing tremulously on a rocky hillside bathed in intense diffused green light. He was barefooted and in his night clothes, and when he tried to walk, discovered that he could scarcely lift his feet. A swirling vapor hid everything but the immediate sloping terrain from sight, and he shrank from the thought of the sounds that might surge out of that vapor. Then he saw the two shapes laboriously crawling toward him, the old woman and the little furry thing. The crone strained up to her knees and managed to cross her arms in a singular fashion while Brown Jenkin pointed in a certain direction with a horribly anthropoid forepaw which it raised with evident difficulty. Spurred by an impulse he did not originate, Gilman dragged himself forward along a course determined by the angle of the old woman's arms in the direction of the small monstrosity's paw, and before he had shuffled 3 steps he was back in the twilight abysses. Geometrical shapes seethed around him, and he fell dizzily and interminably. At last he woke in his bed in the crazily angled garret of the eldritch old house. He was good for nothing that morning, and stayed away from all his classes. Some unknown attraction was pulling his eyes in a seemingly irrelevant direction, for he could not help staring at a certain vacant spot on the floor. As the day advanced, the focus of his unseeing eyes changed position, and by noon he had conquered the impulse to stare at vacancy. About 2 o'clock he went out for lunch, and as he threaded the narrow lanes of the city, he found himself turning always to the southeast. Only an effort halted him at a cafeteria in Church Street, and after the meal he felt the unknown pull still more strongly. Dude, why must you always put your foot right on the mouse pad, Zoe? She can't figure out that that's what I yell at her about when I yell for her at her forehead either. Like she tries to walk across faster. Is her solution to being yelled at for walking on the mouse pad. It's not much of a solution. As you know, when you touch a mouse pad that does the thing, doesn't matter if you do it quickly. I mean, maybe you don't know that. I'm telling you, that's how that works. Where was I? Right. Um, about 2 o'clock, he went out for lunch, and as he threaded the narrow lanes of the city, he found himself turning always to the southeast. Only an effort halted him at a cafeteria in Church Street, and after the meal, he felt the unknown pull still more strongly. He would have to consult a nerve specialist after all. Perhaps there was a connection with his somnambulism, but meanwhile he might at least try to break the morbid spell himself. Undoubtedly, he could still manage to walk away from the pull. So with great resolution, he headed against it and dragged himself deliberately north along Garrison Street. By the time he had reached the bridge over the Miskatonic, he was in a cold perspiration, and he clutched at the iron railing as he gazed upstream at the ill-regarded island whose regular lines of ancient standing stones brooded sullenly in the afternoon sunlight. Then he gave a start, for there was a clearly visible living figure on that desolate island, and a second glance told him it was certainly the strange old woman whose sinister aspect had worked itself so disastrously into his dreams. The tall grass near her was moving, too, as if some other living thing were crawling close to the ground. When the old woman began to turn toward him, he fled precipitately off the bridge and into the shelter of the town's labyrinthine waterfront alleys. Distant though the island was, he felt that a monstrous and invincible evil could flow from the sardonic stare of that bent ancient figure in brown. The southeastward pull still held, and only with tremendous resolution could Gilman drag himself into the old house and up the rickety stairs. For hours he sat silent and aimless, with his eyes shifting gradually westward. About 6 o'clock his sharpened ears caught the whining prayers of Joe Mazurowicz 2 floors below, and in desperation he seized his hat and walked out into the sunset golden streets, letting the now directly southward pull carry him where it might. An hour later darkness found him in the open fields beyond Hangman's Brook, with the glimmering spring stars shining ahead. The urge to walk was gradually changing to an urge to leap mystically into space, and suddenly he realized just where the source of the pull lay. Hey, Binns. Reading Lovecraft late at night, finally, for you. Though it's Dreams in the Witch House. I already did Call of Cthulhu. What was I? Oh, right, this where the source of the pull lay. It was in the sky. A definite point among the stars had a claim on him and was calling him. Apparently, it was a point somewhere between Hydra and Argo Novis, and he knew that he had been urged toward it ever since he had awaked soon after dawn. In the morning, it had been underfoot. Afternoon found it rising in the southeast, and now it was roughly south but wheeling toward the west. What was the meaning of this new thing? Was he going mad? How long would it last? Again mustering his resolution, Gilman turned and dragged himself back to the sinister old house. Mazurowicz was waiting for him at the door and seemed both anxious and reluctant to whisper some fresh bit of superstition. It was about the witch light. Joe had been out celebrating the night before. It was Patriots' Day in Massachusetts, and had... Wonder what that is. And had come home after midnight. Patriots' Day, so the night of April 19th, 20th. So Patriots' Day in Massachusetts is April 19th. Oh, it's the anniversary of the first battle of the Revolutionary War. First shots fired. I know that because it's my birthday, actually. April 19th is the anniversary of the Revolutionary War, first shots fired. And the American Revolutionary War. And it's also the anniversary of the first time LSD was ever intentionally taken. Albert Hoffman got it on his fingers on the 16th, famous bike ride episode. He worked up the nerve to inject himself with LSD with what turned out to be a massive overdose on the 19th. And also when this part of this story takes place. It was in the sky. A definite point among the stars had a claim on him and was calling him. Apparently, it was a point somewhere between Hydra and Argo Novis, and he knew that he had been urged toward it ever since he had awaked soon after dawn. In the morning, it had been underfoot. Afternoon found it rising in the southeast, and now it was roughly south but wheeling toward the west. What was the meaning of this new thing? Was he going mad? How long would it last? Again, mustering his resolution, Gilman turned and dragged himself back to the sinister old house. I don't know why I had to read that twice. I'm sorry. Mazurowicz was waiting for him at the door and seemed both anxious and reluctant to whisper some fresh bit of superstition. It was about the witch light. Joe had been out celebrating the night before. It was Patriots' Day in Massachusetts and had come home after midnight. Looking up at the house from outside, he had thought at first that Gilman's window was dark, but then he had seen the faint violet glow within. He wanted to warn the gentleman about that glow, for everybody in Arkham knew it was Keziah's witch light, which played near Brown Jenkin and the ghost of the old crone herself. He had not mentioned this before, But now he must tell about it because it meant that Keziah and her long-toothed familiar were haunting the young gentleman. Sometimes he and Paul Choinsky and landlord Dombrowski thought they saw that light seeping out of cracks in the sealed loft above the young gentleman's room. Some good priest like Father Iwanicki. Really? The connection is dropping again. Great. However, it would be better for the gentleman to take another room and get a crucifix from some good priest like Father Iwanicki. So, yeah, Lovecraft is a little weak on background logic sometimes. It's one of the things that made him a writer that was not beloved of generations between him and me. 2 or 3 generations total. The things that Lovecraft will let slide because he's a sloppy pulp writer are oddly chosen. But readers who tended to want to be snobbish about low versus high literature, including pulp literature, would light on certain things in Lovecraft as being raging flaws. And they wouldn't. The first thing they would usually talk about is that there's no character development. There's no cinema influenced character arc driven character development at all. The sort of intentionally stilted and mannered and old fashioned language, also very sort of anti modernist, not very 20th century. Both not just that it was old fashioned, but that being that kind of old fashioned was out of fashion in Lovecraft's time and for a couple generations after him in literature. In pulp literature and mainstream literature. It's just an oddball thing to do. Not now, really. But sometimes he lets logic slide in odd ways. Like, it's not clear who the witch and the vamp, like, they just don't haunt people sometimes, unless they're in that one room. And you guys knew about this. And so he's got the room. Why? Like, it's a little loose. Like, they've been there the whole time. They just haunt people in that room sometimes. But more than one ingestion is using the primary URL. Send one stream to the primary. Huh. That's really weird. I got a very odd error. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that'll disappear. So there's somebody just came in. Can you see me? Can you hear me? I'm getting a very odd error. I don't know what it means exactly. But if you came in, I don't know. I don't know when it refreshes the number of people in here. I will just go ahead and keep reading. Though I don't know whether I'm going out over the air. Oh, the one person went out, so that's not going to help me. I don't know, more than one ingestion is using the primary URL. Send one stream to the primary. So I can't click on it to see all the writing, for one thing. It doesn't seem inclined to disappear. More than one ingestion is using the primary URL. Ingestion? Like something you eat? That is deeply strange. Well, I don't know whether this stream is even happening right now then, but you know what? I'm going to keep reading. I'm going to read a little bit more. We'll see. We'll see if anybody talks in the chat. I don't know what that means. Send one stream to the primary. More than one ingestion is using the primary URL. What does that mean? Um, oh. I'm going to turn my phone on and see if I can find me. I should be live right now. I'm not, apparently. Maybe. Uh, there's the one from earlier. Huh. Well, this stream doesn't seem to be there, but I don't know if that means anything. That's well, that's just disconcerting. Maybe I should end it and see what that means. I just have no idea what that error means. Nobody comes in here usually till I've been going for like 45 minutes anyway, though. So, um, huh. All right. I'm gonna assume that people can see me and hear me. If somebody's here, say something in the chat because I really don't know. I'm getting a strange error. I don't know if you guys can see me and hear me, but I'm gonna keep reading. As the man rambled on, Gilman felt a nameless panic clutch at his throat. He knew that Joe must have been half drunk when he came home the night before. Yet the mention of a violet light in the garret window was of frightful import. It was a lambent glow of this sort which always played about the old woman and the small furry thing in those lighter, sharper dreams which prefaced his plunge into unknown abysses. And the thought that a wakeful second person could see the dream luminance was utterly beyond sane harborage. Yet where had the fellow got such an odd notion? Had he himself talked as well as walked around the house in his sleep? No, Joe said he had not, but he must check up on this. Perhaps Frank Elwood could tell him something, though he hated to ask. Fever, wild dreams, somnambulism, illusions of sounds, a pull toward a point in the sky, and now a suspicion of insane sleep talking. He must stop studying, see a nerve specialist, and take himself in hand. When he climbed to the second story, he paused at Elwood's door, but saw that the other youth was out. Reluctantly, he continued up to his garret room and sat down in the dark. His gaze was still pulled to the southwest, but he also found himself listening intently for some sound in the closed loft above, and half imagining that an evil violet light seeped down through an infinitesimal crack in the low slanting ceiling. That night, as Gilman slept, the violet light broke upon him with heightened intensity, and the old witch and small furry thing, getting closer than ever before, mocked him with inhuman squeals and devilish gestures. He was glad to sink into the vaguely roaring twilight abysses, though the pursuit of that iridescent bubble conjuries and that kaleidoscopic little polyhedron was menacing and irritating. Then came the shift as vast converging planes of a slippery-looking substance loomed above and below him, a shift which ended in a flash of delirium and a blaze of unknown alien light in which yellow, carmine, and indigo were madly and inextricably blended. He was half lying on a high, fantastically balustraded terrace above a boundless jungle of outlandish, incredible peaks, balanced plains, domes, minarets, horizontal discs poised on pinnacles, and numberless forms of still greater wildness, some of stone and some of metal, which glittered gorgeously in the mixed, almost blistering glare from a polychromatic sky. Looking upward, he saw three stupendous discs of flame, and at a different height above an infinitely distant curving horizon of mountains. Behind him, tiers of higher terraces towered aloft as far as he could see. The city below stretched away to the limits of vision, and he hoped that no sound would well up from it. The pavement from which he easily raised himself was of a veined, polished stone beyond his power to identify, and the tiles were cut in bizarre angled shapes which struck him as less asymmetrical and based on some unearthly symmetry whose laws he could not comprehend. The balustrade was chest high, delicate, and fantastically wrought, while along the rail were ranged at short intervals little figures of grotesque design and exquisite workmanship. They, like the whole balustrade, seemed to be made of some sort of shining metal whose color could not be guessed in this chaos of mixed effulgences, and their nature utterly defied conjecture. They represented some ridged, barrel-shaped object with thin horizontal arms radiating spoke-like from a central ring, and with vertical knobs or bulbs projecting from the head and base of the barrel. Each of these knobs was the hub of a system of 5 long, flat, triangularly tapering arms arranged around it like the arms of a starfish, nearly horizontal, but curving slightly away from the central barrel. The base of the bottom knob was fused to the long railing with so delicate a point of contact that several figures had been broken off and were missing. The figures were about 4.5 inches in height, while the spiky arms gave them a maximum diameter of about 2.5 inches. When Gilman stood up, the tiles felt hot to his bare feet. He was wholly alone, and his first act was to walk to the balustrade and look dizzily down at the endless cyclopean city almost 2,000 feet below. As he listened, he thought a rhythmic confusion of faint musical pipings covering a wide tonal range welled up from the narrow streets beneath, and he wished he might discern the denizens of the place. The sight turned him giddy after a while, so that he would have fallen to the pavement had he not clutched instinctively at the lustrous balustrade. His right hand fell on one of the projecting figures, the touch seeming to steady him slightly. It was too much, however, for the exotic delicacy of the metalwork, and the spiky figure snapped off under his grasp. Dazed, he continued to clutch it as his other hand seized a vacant space on the smooth railing. But now his oversensitive ears caught something behind him, and he looked back across the level terrace. "Hey, Tropic of Neptune, you can see me and hear me, right? Because I'm getting a very strange error signal that's been there for like 15 minutes, and I decided to just keep going anyway. I guess you can see me and hear me, or you wouldn't have commented, except to say, hey, I can't see you and hear you." Yeah, Christmas is going to be great with the roommates I have. It's going to be wonderful. I'm going to love it in here. Oh my God. But now his oversensitive ears caught something behind him. So you know what? I'm going to describe the error again. I got a yellow bar that says error. More than one ingestion, ingestion, is using the primary URL. Send one stream to the primary and then it's ... and I can't click on it to get it to show me the whole thing. I don't know what it means. But I guess if you can hear me and see me, I don't know. It probably means that the other live stream is still processing, like the one that I shut down a little bit earlier, and it's confused. I guess I hadn't seen it before. You know, I'm sure my whole channel is about to collapse in a welter of disarrayed madness. This will be the last one, boys. It's been a fun run. I'm getting old anyway. A little long in the tooth, the one I got left, the one tooth. All right. But now his oversensitive ears caught something behind him, and he looked back across the level terrace. Approaching him softly, though without apparent furtiveness, were 5 figures, 2 of which were the sinister old woman and the fanged, furry little animal. The other 3 were what sent him unconscious, for they were living entities about 8 feet high, shaped precisely like the spiky images on the balustrade, and propelling themselves by a spider-like wriggling of their lower set of starfish arms. Gilman awaked in his bed, drenched by a cold perspiration and with a smarting sensation in his face, hands, and feet. Springing to the floor, he washed and dressed in frantic haste, as if it were necessary for him to get out of the house as quickly as possible. He did not know where he wished to go, but felt that once more he would have to sacrifice his classes. The odd pull, I smiled because it seems like The subtext here is this story is about what happens when you take too much speed while you're a freshman in college. Like you think you're doing well in classes because you're in these advanced math classes and you're overdoing the old dexedrine a little bit. It is 1936 or 5 or something. Tropic of Neptune, my favorite Christmas movie. I don't know, Eyes Wide Shut, I guess. My favorite actual Christmas movie is Miracle on 34th Street. And I really like the 1951 Christmas Carol with Alistair Sim. The only thing I watch every year for Christmas, though these days, is the Chuck Jones animated TV version of Christmas Carol from I think the early 70s. It's Christmas Carol, but it's gorgeous animation. It's only like 23 minutes long. And they got elderly Alistair Sim to come back like 30 years later to do the voice of Scrooge again for the cartoon. It's just perfect. It's on YouTube. Um, okay, I'm not going to get distracted again. Now that I know you guys are here and you can hear me. Good. Right. He did not know where he wished to go, but felt that once more he would have to sacrifice his classes, right? Which I said reminded me of you've been overdoing the stimulants, man. You thought you were getting ahead of your homework, then you got real advanced with the math, didn't you? Staying up late at night, thinking hard about hard math. And it got easier and easier, didn't it? And now you got witches coming through angles in the ceiling. Look at what you've done. The odd pull toward that spot in the sky between Hydra and Argo had abated, but another of even greater strength had taken its place. Now he felt that he must go north, infinitely north. He dreaded to cross the bridge that gave a view of the desolate island in the Miskatonic, so went over the Peabody Avenue Bridge. Very often he stumbled, for his eyes and ears were changed to an extremely lofty point in the blank blue sky. Um, so Arkham, I've explained several times. Arkham is a city in Massachusetts that doesn't exist. Lovecraft invented it as the setting for some of his stories. Um, in his stories, Arkham is like Salem but witchier. It sort of stands in for Salem. He mentioned Salem other places, but like he said earlier in this story, this place babies disappear on Walpurgis Night. Like that's how witchy it is in Arkham, and that is the source for he invented the town name Arkham, Arkham, when Batman Comics first started using that name for the asylum. Uh, it was just a throwaway reference to Lovecraft, who was at the time a pretty obscure cultish kind of writer to be reading. So that's why it's Arkham Asylum. It's a reference to Lovecraft. Um, to this, the town being named Arkham, where this story is set. Um, The Miskatonic River also does not exist, and neither does Miskatonic University, which is the prestigious university in Massachusetts in all the Lovecraft stories. It's like Brown in Providence, except it's in uh, I think Miskatonic University is in I don't know. There's 3 or 4 made up Lovecraft towns. Um, no, Tropic of Neptune. I do not have a Santa hat. Uh, Now he felt that he must go north, infinitely north. He dreaded to cross the bridge that gave a view of the desolate island in the Miskatonic, so went over the Peabody Avenue Bridge. Very often he stumbled, for his eyes and ears were chained to an extremely lofty point in the blank blue sky. After about an hour, he got himself under better control and saw that he was far from the city. All around him stretched the bleak emptiness of salt marshes, while the narrow road ahead led to Innsmouth, that ancient, half deserted town which Arkham people were so curiously unwilling to visit. Though the northward pull had not diminished, he resisted it as he had resisted the other pull, and finally found that he could almost balance the one against the other. Plodding back to town and getting some coffee at a soda